Yeah, but I don't think we need more power in the promoter's hands. I think we need to respect the fighter. And I think that act is mainly, well, nearly always there to protect the fighter and to make sure they're not taken advantage of. And I think to try and change that act or get it slung out isn't a good look from a fighter's perspective. Like if I went and I came out to you now and said, by the way, I want to abolish the Ali Act because that's there to protect the fighters. I don't want to protect the fighters. I want to do what I want to do at any time. You guys would look at, I'd get so much stick. I mean, and this is really what's happening, kind of behind closed doors, but now it's becoming public. So, you know, the fighters that I've spoke to have certainly raised a lot of eyebrows saying, why are you trying to abolish an act that's there to protect us? And it's probably not a great look.
Yeah. Do you think it's kind of moving towards that UFC model? That's the kind of their first step to do it.
For those guys, it's about ownership and it's about control. And I get it, but it doesn't work like that in boxing. You know, you're not going to operate in a world where fighters do as they're told or do as you think they should do, unless it's fighters of a particular level. And when I look at the recruitment of the league and the fighters they're talking to and the fighters that I know they've signed, they are fighters that would do whatever TKO wanted to do because of the opportunity. For the bigger names, for the bigger fights, they're just not going to do that. And you know, fighters aren't just designed to do as they're told. They have their own brain, they have their own opinion, and they have a team of people that are there to structure the career of a fighter with the promoter.
The twisted logic from various actors in combat sports is that the Ali Act is a relic of the past and doesn't apply to today's environment. Besides, nobody enforces it anyway. If that's the case, then why is there such a push to change the Ali Act protections? Zach Arnold, MMAdraw.com.
James Turner for the untouchable True School Sports. Let's go, baby. Bow!
Be careful what you wish for because it can become a reality.
Yeah.
The Untouchable True School Sports Empire proudly presents something the boxing games are missing. Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. So one of the things in boxing these days that really makes me laugh and chuckle is this whole full court press from Dana White, Jake Paul, and Turki Al-Sheikh to amend and pretty much destroy the basis of the Muhammad Ali Act, because they'll be the first ones to claim, well, the Muhammad Ali Act is useless and outdated, so therefore we have to change it. And my retort to that is simply that when something is useless and outdated, you don't got to change anything because it's actually a thing of the past. Like, for example, these days we have Netflix and we have Hulu and we have many different forms online via streaming that we can use to digest and consume our favorite shows, sports, and content, these kind of things. You know, we don't have to change VCRs in 2025 because VCRs are useless. No, VCRs are a thing of the past, and we leave VCRs where they were back where they were at in the 90s, in the 80s, because they don't need to be updated. If something doesn't need to be updated, you don't have to go back and change anything because it's not relevant. So what they're saying isn't adding up. And really and truthfully, I've always told you guys that the overall goal of Turki Al-Sheikh, and he's even told, forget me, Turki's told you guys that the overall play here in boxing is complete tyrannical control of the sport, and which really shouldn't be surprising because Turki Al-Sheikh is an authoritarian. That's what he's comes from. That's what he is. So that being said, for those of you who don't know, they have went ahead and introduced a bill to Congress to change the Muhammad Ali Act. There's a lot of things to digest, things such as mandatory minimums per round, minimum health insurance coverage. And, those things are, they sound great on paper. Those things are arbitrary because insurance companies can decide on the day of the fight how much they want to insure. There's white lines there. There's gray areas. It's not as black and white as the bill would like to suggest. There's lots to dissect, but what I really wanted to focus on is basically this part of this article that Chris Mannix wrote about the bill, because this new system basically it's not looking to replace the current 4-belt sanctioning body structure of the sport. It's going to operate as a separate system within the sport, and basically they're going to have their own rankings. So Turki Ring Magazine. They're going to have their own rankings. Sanctioning bodies will still exist, but it'll be its own thing. So now there's going to be more division in boxing than there has ever been before. And I don't like it, man. I don't like it. You're already starting to see problems in the sport with this model because, look, Turkey has effectively already killed like 90% of the boxing market. He controls damn near everything, it seems like, these days. But look at I'll give you one example right now of what's going on. Alexander Usyk, who's a great fighter, who doesn't have nothing left to prove to anybody, but like the fight, if he's going to continue fighting, the number one guy that he should be fighting is Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker has been heavyweight champion before. Joseph Parker has beat guys like Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang within the last year and a half, and is probably is the best guy of this era that Usyk has not fought yet. And Turki Al-Sheikh said no, they're not interested in that fight. They want Turkey to fight, or they want Usyk to fight Moses Itama, which, you know, I like Moses Itama. He's a talented fighter, but that's wrong. That's wrong. Parker should be getting that fight. But the thing is, Itama probably will get that fight because there's nobody to really oppose. There's no checks and balances with Turkey. If he wants a certain fight, that fight's going to happen. Like another example, Subriel Matias just became world champion again. Boxing fans are clamoring to see Subriel Matias fight the likes of Gary Anton Russell and Richardson Hitchens. But no, Turkey has him fighting Dalton Smith. So with that being said, I think it's going to cause more division in the sport because now the fighters that opt into this system are going to have their pay capped, and that includes champions because they've already introduced their own pay structure. Fighters that decide to stay with the original structure, of course, that comes with its own problems. We know the ranking system is not perfect, and they can be manipulated. And, you know, I complain every week about certain things in the rankings that I don't agree with. But at least for the fighters, it allows them to make the most money they possibly can. And on top of that, you know, we do actually tend to get more bigger fights under that model than we would this model. A lot of people will say, well, BT, at least we're getting the fights, right? And that's become a popular catchphrase here on True School Sports. But look, Turkey has control over Canelo Alvarez right now, right? And he has control over David Benavidez. That's one of the biggest fights that can be made in boxing. And despite all of Turkey's power and influence, there's no plan to make that fight, which is one of the biggest fights in boxing, actually happen. Canelo is fighting a welterweight, and Benavidez is fighting a British European level, fringe world level guy, Anthony Yard. So there is not really definitive proof that Turkey's model is better. And I think now we've had a good sample size of Turkey fights, and I don't know. I'm not with all this, man. I'm not with all this. I think this is gonna create more division in boxing than there's ever been before. And the irony of all this, the irony of all this is that, you know, these promoters have blood on their hands because I'm gonna quote my boy Toronto Tokyo 1998. You know, a good friend of mine on Instagram. He said that pretty much that promoters all took short-term money to completely bury the sport in the short term. And they they left boxing with literally nothing but the zone. So boxing's just all on the zone now. They sold and they sold out the sport. What's really funny about this whole situation with them trying to update the Muhammad Ali Act or amend the Muhammad Ali Act is that 10 years ago, when PBC first got their money, their hedge fund money from Waddell and Reed, PBC claimed that they would kill the Muhammad Ali Act and that they would create their own belts and their own division and freeze out all the fighters unless they fell in line and kissed the ring, right? And I remember that was met with a lot of uproar here in the boxing community here on YouTube. And even at that time, I spoke out against PBC because I didn't like that. I didn't think that was good for boxing. I think boxing operates best when we have free market, and you know, you kind of kill what you eat, and the most competitive fights will be the fights that, you know, the fans pay for. And I think healthy competition is good for anything in the world when it comes to whether it be fashion, technology, entertainment, anything. So PBC was trying to do that 10 years ago. People didn't like it, and now, you know, Turkey's doing it, and now there's no problem. It's all good. So I don't like this. I think a couple of the red flags that go off in my head. So I think about it in a couple ways. Number one, I think it's not good because it's going to cause more division in the sport, and it's going to cause a lot of how do I say this? Basically, we've seen with Turkey. If Turkey doesn't like somebody, or if somebody that doesn't agree with how he does things, he'll throw him under the bus. He doesn't like the word no. That's why he recently threw Tim Tszyu under the bus after Tim Tszyu lost his last fight, because Tim Tszyu said that he didn't feel like he had to sell his soul to go fight in Saudi, and Turkey didn't like that. And when he lost his fight against Fundura, Turkey got on his mouth and disrespected Tim Tszyu. So it shows that he has no respect for the fighters if they don't agree with him. He only respects the fighters that agree with him. So I think it's going to cause a big rift there. For fighters who are already world champions, right? With TKO and I guess Dana White, the goal is to have complete control of boxing, and it's going to be a cap your pay. Boxing doesn't need to be like UFC. The UFC, I mean, I don't claim to be this big MMA fan or expert or know-it-all, but I know enough about UFC to know that, like, Francis Ngannou never made $1 million before he came to boxing. I know that as of late, a lot of the MMA fans have been complaining that they're not getting the fights they want to see. I know John Jones just retired, and Tom Aspinall, that was a fight he was supposed to get. He never got it. So it's like, MMA is not perfect. So introducing an MMA structure to boxing is not the be-all, end-all. And on top of that, I don't think that there's really any... I know they've talked about doing some things in terms of fighter development, but I don't think that really Turkey and anybody in the circle knows how to build fighters or develop fighters, and that's a very crucial element of boxing. If you're not building and developing the future of boxing, boxing will not be in a great place. I think that I remember a while ago when Dana White used to critique boxing, he used to always say that boxing is being ran like a garage sale. And I believe that the mindset of how Riyadh season and all this stuff is ran is with that of a garage sale. We want the big fights right now, right now, right now. Well, guess what? If you don't at least try to develop the future fighters, then there's not going to be any stars of the future, So it is what it is there. So yeah, do I like the fact that they're trying to amend the Ali Act? No, because underneath all the how do I say this? Underneath all the, healthcare minimums and mandatory minimums and all these kind of things, it's really just it's just music to people's ears to distract from the fact that they're trying to take over the sport and create a monopoly. And monopolies are not good for anything when you're talking about the product being the best. I think there should always be healthy competition in the marketplace, and Turki Al-Sheikh is not interested in healthy competition in the marketplace. He told you guys this a long time ago. We want to crush the competition, and that's what it is. So that's what this is, the final checkmate. All that money that all these fighters have been taking, all these big ass paydays these fighters have been taking, that was just to get everybody to shut up and not criticize them and not speak out against them. And now that that's happened, here we are. Now they're trying to change the only thing in boxing that has given fighters any sort of autonomy and free market to move how they see fit to get the best money for their careers, and it's also forced the promoters to pay these fighters the more money to be in the big fights, and it's allowed for these fights to be as big as possible. So I don't know, man. I don't like this. I don't like what this is gonna do for boxing. I think people have been kind of people have fallen in love with seeing so many big names on one card, which I understand, but it's all a moment in time, guys. I'm gonna keep repeating what I've been saying in my older videos. It's all a moment in time. This is not good for boxing long term, and I don't have to wait and see, because God gave me this thing called discernment. I know what's going on. I can see what's going on clearly before my eyes. I haven't really been wrong yet. Neither has Sean to tell. And that's what it is. So look, man, what do you guys think? Because they're not looking to replace the current 4-belt model of boxing. They're looking to create a whole separate entity, a league of sorts, which I don't know. I don't like it. I don't think it'll be good for the sport, because Turki Al-Sheikh has favorites. Like, he has his favorites, and because there's no checks and balances, because there's not any other game in town right now in boxing, and there'll be even less games in town in boxing to compete. Whoever he likes, so whoever he decides he wants to do well, that's who's going to do well, or that's who's going to have the best chance to do well. At least now in boxing, with when you had, before there was Turkey, you had Matchroom, you had Golden Boy, you had Top Rank, you had PBC. These promoters had to come correct. Now nobody has to come correct because everybody's under the same umbrella. And I don't think 1 + 1 necessarily equals 2. I don't think that automatically means that we get the biggest fights that we want to see, because if that were the case, like I said, there's a million examples I could give you of bigger fights that are bigger than anything Turkey's ever put on that haven't got made yet. Benavidez and Canelo being the biggest one, and that's what it is. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think about Dana White, Jake Paul, and all of them trying to amend the Muhammad Ali Act? Do you guys think it's good for boxing? Do you guys think it's bad for boxing to have a monopoly? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Make sure you guys take the time to subscribe. And like I say in every single one of these videos, you can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just a kid from Dania. So until next time, take care, guys. The last thing I'll say is this, because I forgot to say this in my little soliloquy, my rant. So in the early days of PBC, when Al Heyman had a lot of money and he could overpay a lot of these guys way above market value to make certain fights, if you remember, a lot of times, especially back in those days, it was damn near like pulling teeth. It was pulling teeth to get PBC to make cross-promotional fights. A lot of times, fighters from other promotional companies couldn't fight the PBC guys because PBC was trying to, run a monopoly on boxing. That's why Al Heyman bought time slots on NBC, CBS, these things, because it was a power play to try to take over the sport. But the sport suffered from a competitive standpoint because we weren't getting as many competitive matchups in cross-promotional fights, and it was because of PBC trying to take over the sport. And fighters were getting paid $1 million above market value for cherry picks. And so this is the same thing, guys. Listen, the good book says there is nothing new under the sun. History repeats itself, and this is just like PBC in the early days, just like it. All right. The only difference is that Turki Al Sheikh has controlled Ring Magazine, so he's got more control over the narrative. He has control over one of the biggest media outlets in boxing, so he can put propaganda out there. PBC didn't have Ring Magazine to put propaganda out there, so that's probably the biggest difference. Same thing back in the early days of DAZN with Eddie Hearn. When Eddie Hearn got that big war chest of money from Leonard Blavatnik, he was trying to take over the American market, and he was overpaying guys like Andrade. So it's the same thing. The only difference is that there seems to be more of a tolerance for Turkey because of the fact that he's got more control. He's being bankrolled money by the Saudi Arabian government, and I don't care how much money Al Heyman has or Eddie Hearn has. They can't compete with getting bankrolled by a whole entire government. It's just, I'm sorry, it's not the same thing. So those are the biggest differences, but it's just repackaged in a different way. And the Muhammad Ali Act getting amended, not only is it bad for the fighters, right? It's bad for the fighters because inevitably they're not going to be making as much money. They're going to get capped out. They're going to get capped out of making the money they really deserve at the top level. It's kind of like socialism is about to be introduced to boxing, which I'm not a fan of. But apart from that, and because I know there's going to be a lot of fans out there that are going to say, BT, really and truthfully, I have my own job, I have my own family, I just work, I just watch boxing to be entertained. I really don't give a fuck about these fighters and the kind of money they make. I know a lot of people think like that, and that's fine. You have your right to feel entitled, but it ain't going to be good for you either, the fight fan, because if there's a fight that Turkey doesn't want to see, guess what? Because there's going to be no other competition or no checks and balances, guess what? The fights are not going to happen. And an example it was the one I gave you earlier. Usyk should be fighting Joseph Parker next. Turkey said he's not interested in Usyk fighting Joseph Parker. He wants Usyk to fight Moses Italma. So guess what? Usyk is probably going to fight Moses Italma. And Joseph Parker, who's been winning all these fights, who's a legitimate fighter, who's been heavyweight champion before, because is going to get frozen out and left behind only because of Turkey. And expect more of that in the future if that's what you like. So it's not going to be good for the fighters. It's not going to be good for you guys, the fans. And them trying to change the Muhammad Ali Act is the checkmate move that is going to ultimately create a monopoly on the sport, the likes of which we've never seen in our lifetime. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Leave yours down below. Thank you for watching another video on the untouchable True School Sports Empire. For more great boxing content just like this, make sure you guys stay tuned and subscribe. You won't be disappointed.